Zippity doo dah, zippity yay. For some fucking reason, I'm sick today. Oh god, I hate that. Okay, so I would usually never make a video like this. But with my recent Switch escapades, from games to accessories to the actual console, I've seen some pretty scummy things that people have done to prey on those without the knowledge or technical know-how. You know, I remember back in 2006, my parents were able to find a Wii at launch, and somehow I've been able to find a Switch, Mario Odyssey, and a gaggle of accessories. Maybe it runs in the genes. But believe it or not, Ripley, it's not all that hard to find this stuff in the long run. My name is Pizza Dad, and welcome to my TED Talk. Now that I've said that, maybe my parents will finally be proud of me for once. Okay, so let's start off with why the hell this is all going on in the first place. For those of you who don't know, this whole Switch thing isn't an isolated issue. Nintendo has a problem with not having enough supply for the demand. I mentioned the Wii earlier, but this is the case with almost anything that they've released in the past 2 decades. The Wii, the Wii U, Amiibo, the classic consoles, certain system sellers. They've all been ridiculously understocked, and there's a reason why. Nintendo games are already great as is, but if you add the mystique of rarity, then more people want in on it. Tweets are tweeted, articles are written, news stories are ran, and YouTube videos are made. When the word gets out that something is rare, there's always a group of ravenous Neanderthals called Scalpers who never fail to ruin the fun. They buy everything a store has and then resell it at higher prices. Because they can. It's not a surprise to all of you that I don't like scalpers, and I'm quite happy when they get their comeuppance. I love to read that some scumbag bought thousands of dollars worth of toilet paper and sanitizer, but legally can't resell it. It makes my morning. However, they don't really get that karma when it comes to electronics. For some fuck all reason, stores don't put limits on the amount of game systems, games, or accessories that you can buy, which just ends up encouraging this behavior. Maybe I'm wrong. If so, tell me down below. So when the Switch finally launched, it was the same Nintendo cycle. Average shoppers can't find one because some Cro-Magnon bought them all, and store manager number 21 facilitated it. For the first few months of the Switch's release, it was ridiculously hard to find. It was batshit insane. It took up until summer of 2018 for me to start physically seeing Switches in my local stores. And for a couple of years, everything was alright. You could walk into a Walmart or whatever, buy a Switch and a few games, and walk out any day of the week. It was perfect. However, due to a pretty drastic case of worldwide pandemic, the factories where Nintendo Switches are actually made were shut down, causing us to be stuck with another Switch drought. Which brings us back to present day. Before we move on, I do feel like I need to put a bit of a disclaimer. Nintendo will eventually reopen factories and Switches will be made again. They've said it'd happen as soon as the end of June, which is only a month away. So if you really don't want to hunt down deals, go from store to store, go on shop online, if you just wait until midsummer, all of this stuff should be easier to find. Not easy, easier. Alright, so let's start off with the most important things. The games, obviously. If you're buying a Switch, you're buying it for the first party titles. Mario Odyssey, Animal Crossing, Pokemon, Zelda. But there's even especially unique things like Fitness Boxing, Ring Fit Adventure, and Labo. But with all of this going on, resellers have decided to buy a bunch of games and relist them everywhere for ridiculous prices. Okay, so something that I've realized is that because all of this was so mainstream and the Switch is basically the biggest gaming console right now, even your average Joe thinks that they can tap into a gold mine. While I understand that times are hard, there is a difference between reasonable pricing and you being a fucking Looney Tune. I'm going to say this once and only once. If you are trying to sell a used game for anything over $50, you're a poopy head. Unless it is actually rare, nobody should ever be pricing games like this. Whether you want to admit it or not, the moment you buy something and it comes into your possession, it's lost value. It doesn't matter if it just sat on your shelf, it doesn't even matter if you unwrapped it or not. The moment you come into possession of something, it has lost its full retail value. Because for that $60 at a store, you get the promise of a new game with a warranty that can even be refunded for full price. But with that same $60, you can buy that game used from some guy down the street. And the worst part is, It's not like these games are hard to find. Fitness Boxing is being resold on Amazon for $90, but I bought it on Walmart.com for just $65. Ring Fit is absolutely fucking ridiculous right now. However, I found it at my local GameStop and Target. And all of the other Switch games, including Animal Crossing, were at my local Walmart. So just don't feed into this. Pretty much, just don't buy your games from local marketplaces, especially not right now. Your best bet is your local Walmart, Target, or Best Buy, who all, by the way, have same-day pickup options. But Best Buy and even Target have a completely contact-free option where you just park your car and the employees just give you your items. It's how I bought Super Mario Odyssey and even some of my accessories. Speaking of which, the biggest accessories that are hard to find in person right now are stands, cases, and controllers. Every store near me is barren when it comes to this stuff, even GameStop. However, I do have one word for you: Amazon. Recently, Amazon shipping speeds have gone back to normal. Now, some stuff does sell out like crazy, but it's usually back in stock within a day or so it's not that big of a deal. And while some of you or your kids may be impatient for a case or a grip or something to protect what's basically your fucking family heirloom at this point, even then, you shouldn't really even be going out and about right now, so keeping your Switch inside for a few days until your package gets here ain't that big of a deal. Controllers are definitely something that can get super dirty really quick, so even if you do find one cheap second hand, it's worth the price to get it new, with a warranty, and most importantly, germ-free. The one thing I can't find for the life of me are Joy-Con. Resellers are charging up to $120 for used Joy-Con, and they're sold out absolutely everywhere else. Now luckily I have a pair, but I got my Switch used, so I'm just counting down the days until the drift settles in. I was occasionally able to find a right Joy-Con in various colors on GameStop.com, but even then they sell out really quick. You can also find these hoary D-pad Joy-Con, but they're specifically for handheld mode. So TLDR, just don't use your Joy-Con a lot until this all blows over, because replacing it sounds like a pain. And if you just don't have a pair, buy a cheap wired or wireless controller to substitute it with. Contrary to popular belief, the Switch doesn't need the Joy-Con to function, kinda like the Wii U needs its gamepad. You can essentially just use a Switch with a Pro controller or any other cheap controller you can buy. That is, unless you're playing these games. And here's my final tip on accessories. Buy from Etsy. Look, lots of other people need to be making that coin as well, and they can do that by making quality products, including accessories for the Switch. Of course, check reviews from those who have bought the product you're looking at, but personally, I've only had pretty great luck when buying from the site. Pretty much any accessory that isn't a controller, you can find it on Etsy. Stands, skins, controller mounts, grips, joystick covers. There's even these little case replicas that can actually hold your Switch games. It's so fucking adorable. One that I especially want is this arcade cabinet for the Switch in tabletop mode. I don't need it. It's really big, and it carries a hefty price, but that's exactly why I want it so bad. If you can't find whatever you're looking for at a retail store, look on Etsy and support an independent artist. Boy, I wish I was sponsored by them. I'm not, by the way. My manager has told me to explicitly state that this is not sponsored by Etsy. But if they ever wanted to sponsor me, you wouldn't see me complaining. And finally, we're at the pièce de résistance, the Switch Lite. I just have to touch on it super quick. So since the Lite has less features, there's less people trying to buy one as opposed to the original Switch. Now, that doesn't mean that these still aren't difficult to find. Specifically, the colors coral and turquoise are essentially a rare species to me at this point. But I've been able to find stock in my local retailers pretty easily, and they can be found on your major online stores. So, when you see a listing like this, you can realize how much of a bozo that the seller is, and just ignore it. I will say this again for the people in the back. You can find the Switch Lite in store, or you can even get it shipped to your home for a small price. Remember how I said that I like it when scummy resellers get their comeuppance? This is one of those moments. If you bought a bunch of Switch Lites thinking that you'd make a hefty amount of cash and that it was a good investment, I hope you kept your receipt. Man, you must have been the kind of person to invest in Blockbuster. Look, if you don't want to deal with any of the BS that's tied to hunting down an actual Switch, the Switch Lite is a pretty damn good substitute. Just as long as you don't want to play any of these or play on the TV at all. As somebody who had it for 4 months as my primary Switch, it ain't all that bad. But fine, time to get to the actual meat and potatoes. When it comes to hunting down an actual Switch, my only real solution is to buy locally. Now I know that a lot of you are confused right now. Wasn't this entire video made to avoid being scammed by your local scalpers and resellers? It was, but when it comes to the Switch itself, you really can't get that at retail. Locally, people will be there the moment the store is open to buy a Switch, and that's if they have any stock. And online, it's a completely different story. It came out that a 16-year-old teenager made a bot to buy sneakers automatically the moment that they release. He then modified it for the Switch to get his friend one because the creator himself doesn't even like video games. And after that, he just released it to the public for free. There are even some people trying to sell this exact bot for a profit online. Now, regardless of whether you think this is all ethical, it's not, by the way. The fact that this stuff is even out there means that our out-of-touch friends or older relatives are SOL when it comes to getting the console. It is physically impossible to naturally buy a Switch on Amazon or any other retailer. And that is why when you do see online listings, whether they're used or new, the prices range from about $400 to $600. So, how does buying locally change this? Well, it all depends on your area and honestly how nice your neighbors are. I'm fortunate enough to live in a rural area with a very friendly community, but even then, I came out with a used Switch for $400. It was missing the Joy-Con straps. The listing said that it had an SD card with it, but there just wasn't one, and there were some general signs of wear, some scuffs and scratches. The seller himself was a nice guy, but he listed every single item that a new Switch comes with. So to a parent, this seems like a great deal. But to me and a lot of other people who have a Switch, this is normal. The Joy-Con grip and an HDMI cord should come with a used Switch. It's crazy to say this out loud, but I was technically lucky. Make no mistake, we got gypped, hardcore. But that's just because I was impatient and I really wanted to play Mario Odyssey and Katamari Damacy on my TV. Sure, you can find listings like these, but buying an expensive item like this and getting it shipped is a pretty big gamble. When we were first trying to buy a Switch, we came across a listing for only $250 that was uploaded just the day before. The seller was only about an hour away from us. The pictures that he had up were a couple of the promotional photos and a couple taken of a Switch in hand. We made him an offer to pick it up in the morning with a no contact pickup, and he emailed back,
"I'm shipping this item."
What do you even say to that? Look, I understand that during this time, selling and buying things, especially secondhand, is a cause of concern. However, a no-contact pickup is exactly how it sounds. You just have to set your shit outside, and I use one of these many services to pay you immediately. So something seemed fishy, and we weren't biting his bait. So we asked him how we were supposed to see what we were buying firsthand, and make sure that we're getting the product in the condition that we're paying for. And this guy said, I shit you not,
"I run a PC repair shop out in those regions. Why would I lie?"
So after that, I completely stopped the correspondence. My personal issue with that guy is that it was all a gamble. Maybe he was telling the truth, maybe he wasn't. Maybe we'd pay $250 for a used Switch, or maybe we'd get 2 hefty turds and a lump of coal. At the end of the day, that guy knew that he was at an advantage and he used it. And so are all the other sellers with listings over $400. They know that the general public is in a state of desperation, not only for safety, but escapism. People are yearning to experience new things, and if you have the power to gain from $400 to $600 on that experience, a lot of people are going to take that chance. So whether we like it or not, locally is pretty much the only way to smartly and safely buy a Switch. Yes, there's a possibility of getting gypped like your pizza parents, but as long as you follow these rules on screen, you should be fine. And the biggest of them all is, if it sounds too good to be true, it is. The moral of this video is, just buy smart and safe. Don't fall for some jackass who thinks he can pull the wool over your eyes just to make an extra $200. So, what'd you guys think of this video? It's pretty different, but after all the stuff I saw while looking for my own Switch stuff, I feel like this all just needed to be said. I do hope this video was helpful in some way. If it wasn't, then I hope it was entertaining. If there is somebody you know who's looking for a Switch or anything Switch related, then send them this video. The more people I can help, the better. Stay safe, everybody. I'm gonna go get in shape by playing fitness boxing.
Do I actually have to fucking bob and weave? Oh shit. I think my fucking ankle popped. Oh shit. Ha!